Okay, so today we're going to look at a very unusual subject that at the beginning of the week I thought this is not a good idea, and this morning I thought it was an okay idea. So we're going to look at the kingdom of the Moors in the Iberian Peninsula, Portugal and Spain, and a little bit of southern France. In other words, the Moorish kingdom, the Islamic kingdom. And if you ask anybody if the Muslims ever settled in Spain, most people would say never. They will always say that Spain has been a devout Christian country from year zero, but that's not exactly fact. It was only in 1492 that the last of the Moors were expelled from Spain. Up until 1492, in parts of their time, they had ruled over 90% of the landmass of the Iberian Peninsula. This is a leader back when the Moorish kingdom was being established and really getting powerful, Abderman. We'll mention Abderman a little bit later. But I think the hardest thing today is to try and keep away from being racially abusive towards the Christians, which I've had a habit to do for the whole week. I've been very harsh on the Catholics and the Christians, and maybe I can balance that a little bit. However, we need to move on, and that is one of my goats.
Oh.
So,
He looks like a Cyril.
what's that?
He looks like a Cyril to me.
No, that's a Bobby.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so when you set out doing these lectures, you always think, have I got anything that I can throw at a lecture from personal experience? And I do have two. I've actually worked on a site that there's archaeology from this is Islamic period in Spain. So I've actually excavated in Spain. I know a tiny little bit from first-hand experience. And I've actually seen the archaeology of the Islamic / Moorish kingdom in Cyprus through artifacts that I was shown and having a little bit of discourse about. So it's good that I've got that. And, when you do subjects like Petra and you think, right, I've never been to Petra, but I've known and been educated in Petra for a long time. So there will come a subject that I will think, oh my God, I know nothing about this, but that will be a challenge. But I'm sure one will come up in the future. And one exciting thing is, this sounds like it's a sales piece, but it's not. It's really exciting on a Thursday as of next week to be communicating with archaeological techniques, so I can get up to date on the new radiocarbon dating techniques. I've got a friend in Australia that is constantly sampling material, so I can basically ask her advice as well. All these different things. So it's good to be able to connect with new things. This plate itself is the epitome of the Moorish kingdom. And why is it the epitome of the Moorish kingdom? There you go. It's showing the word of God all over this plate. And what is the other epitome of the Moorish kingdom? This color white. You've actually got tinware, Islamic tinware pottery in the 900s. 600 years before us dumb, stupid Westerners ever thought of having tinware on our tables. Except there was tinware pottery imported into this country, but that would have been through the Islamic trading network. So that's that. The other thing as well is the white again, because you've got the link with tin, the tin oxide, which would have been exported out of Cornwall. So that's another thing. What else is important about this? We've said about the date, the animal on front, the donkey. And Islamic pottery inevitably, and Islamic art and architecture inevitably does not show images of people, except when they're trading it to the infidel, the Westerners. That's when you get images. But amongst their normal domestic wares and their architecture, you do not see images of individuals. In a way, it's a bit of a take on Protestantism, where images of people are not to be shown and that type of gubbins. But this is a really nice example of the pottery that they're producing. Again, when we have got no contact with the trade links from China, for example, even though there were trade links established, but when they're cut due to the Islamic monopoly in the Mediterranean, the only tinware type pottery, the only China type pottery that we've got any access to is the pottery that we're actually finding from the Moorish kingdom of the Iberian Peninsula. And if you are Catholic, you're not going to like this lecture. So again, what we are talking about is looking at plates and platters, and you know, when we're using wooden platters, these people are using proper plates and dinner services. And in fact, you had a massively high level of living on the Iberian Peninsula when you've got the occupation of the Moors. It's completely different. It's a completely different world. Where we're sort of the typical Monty Python, picking up mud in the fields with our hands. These people have got sanitation, medical advancements, libraries, and all the rest of it. And we're not talking about the annihilation of the Christian population in Spain and Portugal. Within the Islamic faith at that stage, there was religious tolerance for other religions, where we would go into the Holy Land, rape and pillage any Islamic person we would come across, put them onto a cross, but they had respect for the Christians within this landscape. So where the Christians are very brutal in their treatment of another faith, seemingly the Moorish kingdoms of Spain and Portugal have a great respect for other religions. Something to learn from. When you look at the extreme of the Islamic State, that is an extreme. But when you look at how the Crusaders treated any religion that was in its path in the Holy Land in the Crusades, there's the comparison. I do not like Catholicism. I absolutely detest any of their religious orders, and that will obviously have come through in my lectures by now. This building itself is at Alhambra. This is one of the great stone carved structures as part of the Moorish kingdom. And jumping directly into the level of respect that not only the Moors have for Christianity, in fact, the Christians on this peninsula have a great deal of respect for Moorish architecture as well. It's a great communication, but then it makes a mockery of religion altogether. What's the point in having religion when seemingly you are in buildings that have the word of God from the Islamic point of view, and you're reading the Bible? It makes no sense. There's no sense of wars between religions, and there's no sense in religion at all when you look at the Moors on this peninsula. But we will look at this building again. I want to look at this, but we're going to go back. And one thing I would like to mention is that we don't not just only have earthenware. What we're looking at about the tinware across this Mediterranean, one of their innovations is that you've got earthenware pottery that is then dipped in a tin oxide wash or a slip, if you want to give it that name. And then it's let to settle. Then you've got these trailed green copper oxide designs on them. And this is a type of pottery that I was looking at in Cyprus all those years ago. But this is everything that I want to show you. The word of God, Allah Rahba, Allah Rahba, Allah is great, on these carvings all over. And when you think about it, Alhambra was captured, was taken over by this Christian faith. And you know what? It's still there. They didn't desecrate it. They didn't destroy it. They didn't blow it up. They didn't remove it. And in many ways, one, I don't believe you should have religions, but secondly, if you're going to have religions, you should have religions that have got mutual respect for other religions. And this is what we're seeing. The Moors take over the Christian landscape in 711, and then 1492, the Christians take over the Moorish Islamic landscape, and there's respect for their buildings. And so it makes no sense when you look at other areas of Christianity and the conflict with Islam. But when you look at the Hagia Sophia, now that's an interesting example. And when you look at Constantinople, Mehmed the Great, on the 29th of March, in the year 1453, when Mehmed captures Constantinople, you'll have an example of religious tolerance. And actually somebody said that I was a Muslim lover when I actually watched one of my lectures in regards to the takeover of Constantinople by Mehmed II. They said, oh, you're actually making out that the Muslims didn't enslave Christians. Well, I actually know for a fact that lots of the Christian places of worship remained intact, and the faith was respected in Constantinople. So that doesn't make me a Muslim lover. That makes me somebody actually giving you facts of history. So looking at this as well, this is all carved out of stone. And as you can tell, I've let loose in this lecture today. So what you've got here, this is all carved out of stone. This is not wood. This is stone with the word of God actually carved into it. And when you're thinking about this palace, it's survived over 700 years, 800 years. We have no comparison with this type of archaeology in Great Britain. No excuses for it. You know, when we look at the Reformation, for example, thankfully we're destroying and pulling down the Franciscan places of worship and the Dominican evil places of worship. We're ripping them all down, thankfully, because I wouldn't give them any sense of respect either. But that's the British mindset. The Spanish mindset was to actually cherish their history, cherish their past, and embrace their past. This is what we see in Spain. So nothing I can say about British history is good at this stage. So again, what we would see with this is that within these palaces, thousands of people actually lived in these palaces, thousands of them. At one palace, we've got references of 20,000 people living in these palaces as servants, as workforce, as the people actually live there, stablemen, all the rest of it. We've got all these people working in these palaces. In other words, lots of the local people that were connected with these Moorish palaces and towns and cities and ports and so on were actually Christians. They were Jews. They all worked together. So this is the idyll of seeing how religions would work together. And in fact, there would be times in history that Muslim armies and Christian armies would fight other Muslim and Christian armies alongside each other. So in other words, what we're seeing is the sense of place is more important than religion. And this is borne out in the survival of the history, the architecture across this Spanish peninsula. So there you go. That's how much of the landscape that the Moors actually controlled. What we've actually got is, other than the Basque and the Catalan country in the north, the whole landscape was overcome by the Moors. And there's only one way that you can see a massive Christian revival after the Moors have left in 1492. There's only one way you can see the period of discovery after 1492 and the Italian Christopher Columbus with patronage from the Portuguese and the Spanish. There's only one way you can see that is if the landscape's already crisscrossed by the Christians already. What we're saying with the Moors, they're not wiping out the Christians. Christians are living alongside the Moors, alongside other religious creeds and faiths across this peninsula. This is what we're seeing, a model. And then overnight, you've got one of the most powerfulest Christian countries in the whole of Europe. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to you. But within 100 years, the Spanish are defeating the English Armada. This is how great this country actually becomes. And yes, I am very biased in the way I'm looking at history. But then again, you've got to be biased when you look at a subject like this to become enthused and interested in the subject. Well, they're occupying most of the islands in the Mediterranean, including Cyprus. And I made a statement. I made a statement on Tuesday. I said, actually, you can see these remains all the way across Spain where the Moors actually occupied. And one of my members on Tuesday said, no, you can't. I said, well, but the reason why you can't see the remains in lots of other regions of Spain is because the civil war eradicated every single monument in its way, particularly in parts of the country that the civil war, you had whole towns and cities in Spain that were flattened. So any of the Moorish architecture would have been destroyed anyway. But lots of this stuff did survive into the 1800s. Spain, for example, like so many other countries, has not always been called Spain, has not always been Catholic. In fact, it was a country of great tolerance. Alhambra, there it is. So the places that we're going to mention Cordoba, we're going to mention Seville, Cadiz. We're going to look at this bit of the coastline. This is the Granada area where the best of these remains actually are still with us today. And it's with trying to get to the grip of what you're looking at. Can you hopefully understand the subject matter? And look at this. This is a very interesting map. Very interesting. But we're going to move on from this a second, and we're going to come back to it because I've got this. And this is a map that moves. Just have a quick look at this a minute, and we'll go through the information. So the Quran itself was in its final form in the year 632. There you go, the expansion of the Islamic faith. Look at that. It's occupied the entire Arabian Peninsula. And by the year 655, they're venturing into the lower part of Spain. So there you go. Mecca, Medi down there, it's expanding. They're making the religion really popular. In other words, people are turning to a new religion. Then they go into the Sassanid Empire in the north, defeat the Sassanids, defeat the Byzantines as well in this part, take over Egypt as well. The Christian worlds are just swept away because it's far better to go to this new religion. This new religion is far more understandable and tolerant than Christianity could ever have been. And they're occupying these islands as well. So if you actually go back, and this is what we're talking about, the Moorish conquest of Spain. So within, look at that date there. They're obviously going in there by 655, but it's not until 611 that there's great expeditions into Spain. And between 711 and 732, most of Spain and Portugal has been conquered. There's only one way you're going to be able to do that, because people have had enough of Christianity. They've had enough of the corruption that Christianity brings with it. So what you've got there before, and what I'm saying, the corruption of Christianity, I'm talking about Vatican Christianity. I'm not talking about the Christianity that we talk about on our Wednesday evenings. That Christianity that come over with the early Roman Empire over to Britain, and not the Vatican. That's a far more purer Christianity than the distorted Christianity that we see. But the Moors are actually sweeping away. The popularity of this new faith sweeping that old religion away. But Spain has actually seen a great deal of changes. What Spain has seen, they've seen it being heart of the Roman world. Before that, it was part of the Carthaginian world. Then Hispania, a major province for the Roman world, the 9th Hispano Legion coming over to Britain. And then the Visigoths are invited to settle in parts of Spain. Then they invade in numbers into Spain. And then for a big period of time, you've got this impure Christianity. And then what you then have is just being swept away by this new religion. So what you've got holding up against this religion, keeping the Moors at bay, are the Frankish kingdom in the north. Frankish, France, those are the people that eventually give birth to the French state over time, the French kingdom. So this is what we're seeing. It's highly popular. And in fact, it may be a great surprise to some of you today that people, even though Spain is classed as a Christian country, the Christian country of Spain embraces its Islamic past and builds in the Islamic way. The train station at Toledo is a complete rebuild in the 1800s of everything that the Moorish world was. However, it's built in a Catholic landscape. You could say that Catholicism is very different in Spain as opposed to the likes of Italy. So this is the sad story. The Moors leave in 1492, but the legacy is truly great. The legacy is truly diverse, as I'm telling you today. When they leave, is very different from what the Crusaders in the 1100s do to the Holy Land. If you're a Muslim in the Holy Land, you are terrible things happen to you. Saladin's own sister was tortured, raped, and executed. And when Saladin took to the Christians, he thought, right, this is an evil vent of Christianity, and he wiped it out, thankfully. However, when you're talking about the expulsion of the Moors from Spain, people have learned something, and the Christians say to the Moors, we want you to leave. They're not really persecuted. The ones that remain, they are still there in the 1600s. And something that I find very, very odd about the Moorish kingdom is that you've got the Spanish Inquisition. And I think everything that we read about the Spanish Inquisition needs to be questioned. The Spanish Inquisition, when you see the Spanish Inquisition portrayed, what you see is that if you're not Christian, you are persecuted, you're burnt, you're executed, you're imprisoned, you're tortured, all these terrible things happen, right? So why is it when the Christians take over Spain after 1492, there are huge Islamic communities still in Spain under the Spanish Inquisition? Why is that? So in other words, there's something very wrong with the portrayal of the Spanish Inquisition. I don't feel it was as bad as history makes it out to be. It's more tolerant, in other words. One thing that we do see is that the representations of plant life within Moorish art, Islamic art, we see these wonderful representations. We see leaves, we see flowers, and this is again tinware itself. So this tinware, as I say, dates back to the 800s, 900s. It's being traded around. And actually, I'm going to chuck in something else as well. It's the coin. When we talk about the euro currency, and we talk about the failure or success of the euro currency, depending on which sort of side you're on, we did actually have a European currency in the 900s. It was the Islamic dirham coin, the Islamic silver coin, and that coin itself was the European currency. You could find, when we excavate on archaeological sites in Britain, it's not unusual to find Islamic coins on our archaeological sites because it's like the euro coin. It's got a set weight, it's got a set value, and this is what we then set our monetary system to. There's this huge economic block across Europe thanks to the monetary system. They basically unify a set weight of monetary standard. And this is those Islamic dirham that you can actually find on various archaeological sites across Europe. And you get massive coin hoards, in fact, of these Islamic coins, these silver coins. So what you're talking about all this green area, all this Islamic world, probably in about the 1200s, something like that, late 1200s, because slowly but surely they're being sent away from the islands. But there's something rather interesting what's going on. And what's going on is that as the Moors retreat, and in fact that's slightly exaggerated, the map there, that's sort of the furthest extent where they got in the 700s, right? So obviously, and this big white area, they've not really conquered the north either. So bit of a mistake on that map. But one thing that's happening, when you look at the 1400s, what's happening, if you follow my hands, the Islamic faith is rising in the east. and it's conquering the Byzantine world, but it's waning in the west. So it goes away in the west in Spain, and it rises in the east. And forevermore, for the next 200 years, it's going to be a direct problem in the east. Turkish Ottoman Christianity, which is Turkish Ottoman Christianity. What a dichotomy. Turkish Ottoman Islam is marching into Europe. If these two sects of Islam hadn't been at each other's throats, we would all be under Islam today, because they would have come in from the east, they would have come in from the west, and they would have conquered most of northern Europe. So Moorish architecture is a variant of Islamic architecture. It's very specific, mine. It's a form of architecture that uses motifs, repeated patterns, certain style. And when we look at it, we've got various arches, calligraphy, vegetative designs, decorative tiles. It's survival. One point I was going to mention is quite clear. And this is gonna seem a very brash statement. But after you do a lecture, I think I've earned the right to actually say the following. And the right to say the following is as follows. When you get all this archaeology surviving, when you get all these buildings surviving from the 1000s, the 1100s, and 1200s, these buildings associated with another religion, they're surviving, they're still there, and they're beautifully built. If you look at, say, for example, a period of conquest of South and Central America by the Portuguese and the Spanish, 50, 60 years after the Moors have actually left. When you look at that period of conquest, there's one interesting thing. I would say, and historians would say, that the gold that was brought back and the wealth that was brought back to Spain and Portugal made these more powerful countries than they'd ever been. I would actually disagree with that. And the reason why I disagree with that is lots of buildings that were funded to be constructed in the 1600s, most of them have gone. Very few of them are of any good quality compared to the Moorish art. Obviously indicating that the wealth that was generated by the Moorish kingdom of Spain and Portugal and North Africa outclassed the gold that was being brought back from the New World in the 1530s, 1540s. The Moors were Muslim and influenced by the Islamic architecture, far greater Islamic architecture. This is the greatest of Islamic architecture. I don't care what anyone says. Although mosques are the most common examples of Moorish architecture, motifs spread to the designs of homes and places of businesses. One of the most famous examples of Moorish architecture is the Mezquita, or Grand Mosque of Cordoba, Spain. Is today the region's Catholic cathedral. How the hell is that? How is that? So there can't be this level of hatred that we're told about by the likes of the Inquisition and so on. What we're going to do, I want to go to Cordoba a minute, right? There's a point to be made with this slide, and the point is quite clear. This is converted into a Christian place of worship, and it still looks like a Moorish Islamic place of worship. It still looks like it. It does to me. But the same thing can be said when you go to the Hagia Sophia, the biggest cathedral of Islam, if you know what I'm talking about, because it was once a cathedral in that part of the world. When you go into the Hagia Sophia, if you squint your eyes, it's almost as if you're in a Christian cathedral, but it's an Islamic mosque, because Mehmed the Great said, respect this Christian place of worship. We're going to convert her into a mosque. But most of the Christian stuff is still there, and most of the Islamic stuff is still there in Cordoba. It's quite strange that. Again, it tells you of the pointlessness of religion. So when we look at this Moorish art, when they're creating these really complicated architectural forms, in other words, sacred geometry, that's the word, sacred geometry. Everything to the Moors is sacred geometry. Al-Arwahba. The form of Al-Arwahba has to be sacred and sacredly formed. The forms of their tile work and their paintings is geometrically formed. This is in the 1000s, 900s, 1000s. We haven't even devised a Gothic arch yet. We're still into these Romanesque forms of arches. It took us into the period of decorated art when we come into the period of the 1400s in Britain, that we get anything like this, but we don't even get anything like this either. This is far advanced than anything in the West, anything that we could ever see. And in lots of ways, we base our architecture on these Islamic forms. In fact, it has to be said, is it not, that Edward I was inspired by the way castles were being built in the Holy Land. In fact, when you look at the likes of Carnarvon Castle, it uses a form of building that can be seen with the defensive walls at Constantinople and those walls that you can see in the Holy Land built by the Islamic peoples there in the Holy Land. So in other words, the West is greatly influenced by these civilizations. In fact, where we are still using very crude medicine, they are competing to have some of the best medicine across this Islamic, Ottoman, Moorish landscape. And you know what? One thing that I really hate is when they say that the Muslims built the library at when the Muslims burnt down the library of Alexander, when in fact it was the Christians who did it. Why would the Muslims want to destroy a library when they're very much into their art, architecture, academia, science? It doesn't make any sense. So this sacred geometry, when you look at something like that in the bottom, we're creating nothing like that in the Western Hemisphere. And in fact, it's this very art that inspires architects to actually build from today. So a little bit of information here. The Moors were the Muslim inhabitants of Maghreb. And basically, the Maghrebin Berbers in North Africa. Moors are not the distinctive or self-defined people as I'm making out, but I've got to have a start. The term Moors has no real ethnological value. Basically, it's a period in time more than anything. The term has also been used in Europe in a broader, somewhat derogatory way to refer to the Muslims, but I'm not using it in derogatory form. When we look at, for example, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, with the best Alan Rickman playing in it, they actually refer to the character who's with Robin of Sherwood as a Moor, and they use it in a derogatory form, but we're using it in a highly respectful form today. So we're looking at those dates as well. In 711, troops mostly formed by Moors from northern Africa led the Umayyad conquest of Hispania, the Caliphate. The Iberian Peninsula then came to be known as, in classical Arabic, as al-andulas, which at its peak included most of the Septimania and modern day Spain and Portugal, except for that little bit in the north. The Moors occupied the islands in the Mediterranean, for example, 827 Sicily. They've conquered the Ibiza, even by then, from the Byzantines. We're looking in 1224. They're eventually expelled from Sicily. But until 24, they control most of those islands, like Cyprus, like Malta, across the Mediterranean basin. So in 1492, we got the fall of Granada, the loss of this Islamic state. And there you got final expulsion in 1609, but they lasted for a good time. So the Courtyard of the Lions. The Courtyard of the Lions is part of the Alhambra Palace complex in Granada, Spain. The narrow pillars and intricate carved masonry called morcanas are typical Moorish architectural motifs. And even though there's little bits of restoration, this looks very fine stuff indeed, all carved out of stone. Beautiful. And again, we're looking again at Cordoba and seeing something that really connected with the people that made this into a cathedral. And again, look at that. You're looking and thinking how fine this work is. You're getting nothing like this in Christendom at all, even after the 1400s. The grotto, part of the Cathedral of Cordoba, includes cusped arches, cusps and foils cut into its interior, called its entrado by the Spanish. And again, this all remained up. If this was in Britain, this would have all been ripped down, and we would have presumed that we could build anything like this, which we would have been capable of doing. And why am I being so harsh? Well, I'm just trying to push over a point. So what we've got is one thing that we do see. If any of you have actually been to Spain, it likes its relief carvings, where you get tiles on the outside of buildings. You see the raised designs of these tiles, flowers and petals and so on. And what they would do, they would create the tile, and then you would have almost carved into the mold. This would be glazed over, and this is a typical form. We find this all across the Islamic world, including Spain. Even though this is at Pakistan, we're talking about this coloration within lots of the Moorish art. Again, the use of the flowers, the use of the decoration. And within the mosques of lots of the mosques in Spain and across the Islamic world, look at the use of color. It's almost as if this is writing, and it scrolls and it sort of interjoins and interfeeds. If you're talking about the nonsense of Celtic art, it's nothing compared with this. I know I'm really upsetting a few people today, including Del, which I don't want to do. Del, I love you to bits. And you, Anne. What I would like to do is take you to a little story associated with Madrid. I did mention 2 bits of archaeology that I've come in direct contact with. Back in 1997, no, it was 1998 actually. I went with my newly born daughter and my then wife, and we went to Spain, and we were being paid to be there by the European community to be involved in an archaeological project. It's the only archaeological project I've been on where nobody actually speaks any English, including me. So we can't actually communicate with anybody. But one thing that we do know with the archaeological site that we're actually working on is that it's a Roman site, it's an Islamic site, a Moorish site, and it's actually a Visigoth site. So obviously in order, Romans, Visigoths, Moors. And we're looking at the site, and there's a really wonderful piece of archaeology. I actually get angry when I'm excavating there because we're finding Roman walls, we're finding kilns that the Moors have actually cut into and built these huge grain silos on the site. And you're thinking, why have they done that? And one thing with the Moors is as they're used in the corn drying kilns, you need to then put them into these huge grain silos and then cap them off. And the one point is that every time you go to use it, obviously it's empty, and every time you go to use it, you build a brushwood fire in there, which scorches the inside and lines the inside. So as the archaeologists are excavating, they actually find evidence of the grain that was actually stored in there. It was great. And there was actually large waster pits. Basically, a waster pit is where you put your discarded pottery that has been fired at the wrong temperature to kill, and there's huge stacks of pottery there. And this was my first-hand experience with this world. I didn't really understand it back then. I'm trying to understand it today. So what we're going to do, we will go on to this after the break, a trade item. So it's your turn to have a say. And bingo, let's have Del. Would you like to say anything?
Yeah, that's really opened my eyes to something. I mean, I knew most of Spain was Islamic at one time under the so-called Moors, but how that came about, obviously by conquest, and I know, was it Isabel and Ferdinand or somebody or other? They both ganged up on them. Wasn't it the time of, thingy, what's it, with the windmills and donkey?
Ah, Sancho Panches.
That's the one.
Sancho Panches, yes.
Yeah, it's round about then. And the only thing I've seen about it is that Sophia Loren, why they had an Italian playing a Spaniard, I don't know. Was it called the Canon?
Well, I was thinking about El Cid. That's the one I was going to talk about.
That's the one, El Cid, yeah.
Oh, you're going to do it. All right. I tell you what, do you want me to do this bit? Because I want to do this bit.
You
right?
do that bit.
I do that bit, right? Now, the thing is, before this week, and before my direct contact with it in Cyprus, and before my direct contact with it in Spain, the only thing that I had to go by with El Cid, you just used to think, well, there's no way that Spain could have gone on these expeditions of conquest in South and Central America. You know, there's no way they could have done it if they had been an Islamic country. But they had been an Islamic country. That's the thing. And if you look at the small print, the reason why the Spanish and the Portuguese are conquering territories outside Europe is because for much of their time, they had been a Moorish kingdom, and there had been all this infighting between the Christians and the Moors ganging up on other Moors, and Christians and Moors ganging up on the Christians. That's what it was about. That's the way it went to later on. But when we look at the film Al Cid, I can remember it was Charlton Heston, wasn't it? He was killed by an arrow, and they couldn't remove the arrow. I remember being really frustrated. Why don't they take the arrow out? Why don't they take it out? So they broke it off. And on the day that the Muslims thought that El Cid was dead, they said, look, we're going to be besieged in this city. What should we do? Well, Al Cid is now dead. What we're going to do, we're going to strap him to a board on a horse. We're going to put a bit of wood down his back, right? We're going to put a helmet over his face, and we're going to send him out through the gate. And it worked. All the Moors scarpered because they thought he was a god. He was back again, so they all scarpered. That's what I remember. And I remember thinking that the Moors were cowards, and I remember thinking that they weren't great fighters. But they were massively great fighters. They were a great people. And this is what we're seeing today. Right, Bill?
Yeah. Oh, hang on. I've got one more thing, if I can.
Yeah.
One of the things that really brought it home to me, the influence of, whether it was the Ottomans or not, but it was Piri Rice, the cartographer and the sailor.
Carry on.
He was Islamic, obviously, and bizarrely, it was the last Carry On film, Carry On Columbus, and it suddenly dawned to me, well, yeah, that's how they got the maps. They were trading with the Ottoman Empire, or the start of the Ottoman Empire, via Venice and Genoa.
Yes.
And, you know, they were getting all the information, all the maps. They were paying for it. And that's, I think, how Columbus and his predecessors sort of realised, hang on now, they know more than we do. Let's go and have a look.
And also they invented the astrolabe as well.
Well, of course, yes, because they were great mathematicians.
Exactly.
Whereas, at that time, we were burning people like that.
Well, particularly women like Anne.
Oh, definitely.
Definitely. What about you, Bill? Bill, you're looking really sexy today. It's almost as if you got that look about you.
Thank you, kid. I actually made an astrolabe when I was in my teens, when I was studying astronomy.
Have you still got it?
Oh, crumbs, no. My telescope's gone, everything's gone. Anyway, couple of points, Carl. You showed the amazing architecture and artistry of the Alhambra and the Alcazar, places like that. It's absolutely mind-blowing.
Yes.
But what the Moors did, and Ron pointed it out, and it's obvious really, is that they spent all their wealth on the architecture internally. If you've been to the Alhambra and look at it from a distance, it looks like a prison block. It really does, it's just a square bit of bloody concrete, So you go in and you think, oh, crumbs, was it worth me paying my money to actually visit this? But you go inside and the wow factor is absolutely phenomenal, I don't know whether the Alcazar is the same or the Mesa Cathedral is the same, I don't know. But that's very noticeable about the architecture. Whereas Christian architecture and the cathedrals, they spent the decorative part of it inside and outside. It's just one notable thing about the thinking of Islamic architecture when they constructed these particular palaces in Spain. That's one point, okay? I don't want to hog it. Go back to Muhammad. Obviously, he operated within present-day Saudi Arabia. Yeah,
that's right. 32 AD, 632. This is when the Quran is complete.
Yeah. Obviously, he must have been one of the greatest figures in history, along with Jesus Christ, if you want to be equal about these things. I'm just trying to think what sort of tribal network was in place at the time he came to the fore, because he obviously must have had such an influence. And for the want of a better word, he must have had disciples as well. And it's these group of men who actually had the drive and the wealth to do what they did over the next few hundred years in spreading the gospel of Islam, if you like. So where did the wealth come from around 630 when Muhammad came to the fore? Do we know anything on the tribal structure?
Yeah, basically, it's very much a Bedouin structure, and what you do find is that it's the people, the rulers in that region before 632 knew that they had to destroy Islam before it got any bigger. They could see the growing popularity. They could see this network. And then the network started to spread. And there was one point that they thought, right, we've got to destroy it forever. And they were defeated by Muhammad and his army. And it was almost within overnight. It spread. It was almost as if it was a successful pyramid system where it just went out and it kept being successful. It was the Sassanids couldn't defeat it. The Byzantines couldn't defeat it, and it just kept going.
Yeah, obviously crusades over hundreds of years required a lot of money to drive it. I just wonder where the wealth came from during this time to actually do that. We must have access to whatever, gold, silver, or whatever.
I think they're in, like the Nabateans, they're in the middle of massive trade routes. So in other words, that is the key area to be. In that peninsula, you've got gold, you've got frankincense, you've got myrrh, you've got silks, you've got grain coming from elsewhere. It's a perfect place to be. That's where the wealth is. And the other thing as well is, Bill, you're not having to deal with those tribes from Mongolia. You're not having to deal with that, right? So these people are able to get established. They're basically, people have had enough, and they turn to this new religion.
Yeah, okay, it's a moot point. Yeah, okay.
So Jessica, quickly, Jess.
I think it just sort of highlights what we were talking about last week with identity. It's always changing based on what people think and what benefits them. But I also thought with the architecture as well, it just reminded me of the Arab Room in Cardiff Castle. A lot of influences come from, a lot of Islamics.
The William Burgess, yeah. When you look at this, we've got a massive sense of connection with these other worlds, and we've got to quite clearly say we are just we're a cosmopolitan world. There's no pure race, if you want to put it that way. Right, Anne, you can come in next. Go on, Anne. Give it your best.
Well, it was only that Eastern European archaeologist, historian, Wajabix, or whatever his name is, big bloke with glasses, and he did a great talk on Cordoba.
Nice.
he was talking about those the arches, you know, and he was saying, I'm sure he was saying that it was the Visigoths, or you know, it was the Goths and the Visigoths who were there before the Moors.
Yeah,
And
they were there before the Moors, but obviously.
And there was a bit of influence, you know. But anyway, it was good. Yeah, it's very significant that the shape of those arches.
Yes,
I'll try to find some information on it.
Very significant.
I'm not 100% sure they're Moorish.
Well, that's the lecture we're doing. You know,
yeah.
It comes under my Moorish section. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
The researcher tells me that is definitely Moorish. But yeah, the influences are there, so we can't deny that. Right, Pat, quickly.
Oh, nothing to say. Go ahead. It was good. Appreciate it.
And Henri, and we'll have a break.
It's most impressive that the architecture still survives today,
Yeah.
and you know, shows us really what they did achieve. What was possibly a great shame is the lost libraries and the scientific information and mathematic information that they had that never really penetrated the Western world for hundreds of years.
So if that's a very good point. If you want to go through a list, gunpowder, yes, silk via those trade links that the Islamic world established. If you want to look at advances in iron making and steel making, if you want to go into architecture, if you want to go into the monetary system, in fact, it gets very weak trying to find anything that we actually invented ourselves. We did invent the idiot. I know that one.
Yeah.
I remember when I studied medical history, a lot of it was Eastern medicine and Islamic sort of ways of thinking, and it was completely different to how we were. You know, we were sort of drawing diagrams based on what we thought it was. For example, the head, and they just seemed to be a little bit like their way of thinking was completely different to ours, and we sort of learned from them.
They knew.
Yeah.
They knew. Right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take a break. After the break, we're going to do 10 minutes looking at articles of the week, right? Including the dildo that was found by a child in their garden.
I don't believe it.
I'll bloody show you an image of it. Okay, then what
if it's locked down, it was probably his auntie's.
God, I'm not going to show anyone anything. Right, okay, let's take a break.
Okay.
One. We had a bit of a longer break than we should do, but then again, we're all enjoying ourselves. So articles of the week. 20 articles from the past month. Now, I am sick to the back teeth of Neanderthals. And the reason why is they're always coming up with something new about the Neanderthals. And it's obvious to me now that Neanderthals continued as a species into the modern day. Here we go. Neanderthals were creative, clever, and kind. They've just got an image problem. So they're always coming up with new stuff about Neanderthals. I don't think there's anything that the Neanderthals did in the past that humans didn't do. So here we go. Yeah, this is a really good one. Evidence of early human beings in North America. Now, up until 1250, up until the year 12,500, 14,500 years ago, it was believed that that's the earliest date that we got for the likes of America. But now there's a cave known as the Chiquitita Cave, telling us that we've got human remains in America dating back to 31,000 years ago, pushing the boundary back 15,000 years. Do you know, I believe, mark my words, that probably in the next 2 decades, we'll have human evidence going in America going back 100,000 years, which will make things very interesting. So here we go. This article here, shell shock. So what we've got is a man lying alongside. You can see this image, can you?
No.
All right, hang on a minute. You can't see the image I'm showing in front of you. hang on a minute. So if I move you up there, hang on, where have you gone? You've gone down the bottom of the screen. I know you're in Spain. I'm trying to get you back up on the screen. Oh God, hang on. You've all disappeared. Where have you gone? Stop the screen share a minute. Right, if I show you that, look at that. Shell shock. There you go.
That's Pam.
What? What? That's Pam. There.
That's Pam.
What is that Pam lying alongside? Anyway, shut you. It's an 18-foot long turtle dating back 10 million years. Now, you can imagine, right? There's Jessica in the queue, and she wants my autograph. So what Jessica has to have, she has to have a great slab of earthenware, which is wet, a big slab of clay. And what I'm going to do, right, here's a slab of clay. What do you want to put on this, Jessica? Okay. Dip, 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 right? And yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. And there is my signature. 5,000-year-old autograph. Wonder chicken. Chickens originated in Belgium 67 million years ago and not in China. Evidence there is. Wonder chicken. Also, what about this one? Globe Theatre, London. We have actually found out that the Globe Theatre and the Rose Theatre are not the oldest theatres in London. In fact, the oldest theatre in London was the Red Lion, built in 1567. Eat your heart out. Right. Backyard diggers finds a treasure trove in the garden. Ceramic porcelain object found by a child in a garden, takes it to his mum, and his mum says it's an arm of a doll. But it turned out to be a porcelain dildo. So there you go, exciting stuff. Found in a boy's garden as he's digging. We've also got belt hooks, these types of things there, belt hooks, there you go, these things. We've got various coins being found. We've also got cornstones and saddle stones being found, arrowheads as well. And also a brothel token was found in someone's garden, all in lockdown. So that's the place to look, your garden for archaeology. The Vikings, the legacy of the Vikings, rape, pillage, debauchery, and smallpox. The Vikings gave us smallpox. Here's the next one. Berlin build for Roman ship burnt by the Nazis. In 1944, the Nemi boats were burnt down by the retreating German army. And the Italians want full compensation for the loss of their boats, which were created by Caligula around 38 AD. And they want to do two full reconstructions of them not in wood, but in fiberglass. It's going to cost, yeah. It don't make sense, does it, Bill? You know what I mean?
Well, that's crazy, that is.
That's the Italians for you.
So if, you know, they've got a way of getting money for the first time, right? And then they want fiberglass versions. Roman amphitheatre built in Oxfordshire. Why? Why? Look at this aerial photography. Look at that. Roman forts being found all over the place. And alignments of Roman road. There you go. You can just basically see it. There you go. That's through the summer. A guy goes out on a date with his missus, right? Wait for it, litter picking. And guess what they find? They find a Roman coin of Garidian III. Litter picking. Why? Anyway, they found this coin litter picking. It's from the Emperor Garidian III. It's a denarius, and it's worth an amazing 45 quid. That's enough to take you out on a meal, Jessica, in York. Right, so the Pantheon skeleton is Raphael. So in fact, they found a skeleton of Raphael dating to 1520. There we go, a hoard found in Scotland. Bronze objects, horse braid objects in Scotland, dating back 3,000 years, proving that they had horses in Scotland 3,000 years ago. Oh, this is another Neanderthal article. Look at this. We can't get away with more information about Neanderthals. Climate change didn't kill off the Neanderthals. Well, look at me. Well, I didn't know that one. And here we go. A guy gets a bit bored. He can't drink in a pub. 1,078 silver coins from the Civil War found in a garden at the back of a pub. Now, this is an obvious one. There he is. You can see the woolly mammoth going across the screen. And also, you can see a frog going across as well. There he goes. But anyway, let's do the woolly mammoth. There it is. The woolly mammoth as well. Climate, not humans, led to the demise of the woolly mammoth. Now, there's a fact here. All of you, listen. The woolly mammoth died out 30,000 years ago on the 14th of October at 6:17. Remember, October is very cold in Siberia, right? 6:17, 14th of October. 30,000 years ago, they died out, and human beings didn't arrive there until August the 14th, 15,000 years ago. Therefore, they didn't wipe out the rhinoceroses. More news about Stonehenge, but I can't be asked. Radiocarbon dating. Hailed. We now can date artifacts, radiocarbon dating, back to 60,000 years ago. And we will learn about that in our class. And radiocarbon dating is more accurate. Point the finger at me, mate. Here we go. Ancient woolly mammoth the size of a little puppy found in Siberia. How? You can imagine. Little puppy, little trunk, little legs wandering around. And then he dies. Moving on. Skull found under bridge is medieval. Well, the Romans, after some children had been using it as a football, right? They found out that this skull from Barford in the River Avon dates to 1,150 years AD. 18th of September, 8:15, the person died. Now, this is a good one. Boy finds, whilst metal detecting, some gold that he thinks is tin foil, but it turns out after he chucks it out the ditch, another metal detectorist comes along, says, wow, I found a piece of prehistoric gold. It only turned out to be a hammered piece of prehistoric gold that was used as an adornment. It's like the boy whose bass got away in a fishing competition in Barry in 1987, and that little boy was me. The other guy caught the bass. It was going to come in on my line. Now, this is great. Look at that. Swallow that. Fossil of 12-foot lizard lies inside 15-foot beast. So in other words, here we go. Aguzi Hakaruda Sloba Ricanocerosaurus, which is basically an Ichthyosaurus, swallowed an Yigzang Pusasaurus. And that's what it's about. Oh, by the way, those dinosaur footprints found in Penarth, in my reckoning, are fakes. And that are the articles of the week.
Wow.
Wasn't that good? Wasn't that good? Oh, 648 days. That's how long it may take for the market to recover so hold of your nerve. Right, all right. No, that's not news. I am so knackered now. Right, I'll see you all next week. Right, we've got to finish the lecture, right? Let's go for it. Wasn't that exciting, guys? Little Jessica, she was really happy with that one then. And good old Pam, she's got a grin on her face bigger than a Cheshire cat. So anyway, I've told you about that site in Spain. So here we go. Let's go. Are you looking at the site in Spain as well?
Yeah.
No, Spain. You're looking at Spain, yeah?
Yeah.
Portugal.
There's a song there. Hark now the drums beat up again. There's something along the lines Portugal and Spain, but we won't do the full thing. Now, this is proof positive that the Moors were actually trading with the Western world. And why? Because there's 3 individuals on it. Now, I've had a big row today. Jessica, do they look like women or do they not?
Yeah, they do. But, yeah, looks like maybe they have a hat on. It could be a hat.
Well, or they could be a boat full of lady boys. Anyway, I had a big row today. My Language Major class said, I know all about lady boys. I played one in a film once. Anyway, basically, this thing here is a portrayal of 4 individuals on the boat. And because they're actually individuals, this is not acceptable as an item on your table in your house. So this is going to be a trade item, which is traded in Christian parts of the Mediterranean. So in other words, they're at war with each other, but, you know, they're prepared to trade. And there you go, Bill. A triangular sail is a sign of a what ship?
Oh, Arabic.
Yes, Barbary ships or Moor ships. There you go. That's one thing I remember. You know, they always say, "Who are Jim lad? Have they got a square or a triangular sail?" And then basically, if it's got a triangular sail, it's a Moor ship. I think.
Why do pirates always come from the West Country?
What's that?
Why do pirates always come from the West Country?
Including even the Welsh ones do. Even the French ones do, if you've noticed on Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
So Johnny Depp is thinking about doing the 6th Pirates of the Caribbean film because he was not in the 5th. Anyway, for those that didn't know. So anyway, what we're looking at is we've got a little dish here, and what you can see is you can actually see the earthenware. If I can get my little tools out, bit of an annotation. There you go. Tools out there. Good. Bingo. What you can see there is you can see the earthenware, right? So this is actually, this is basically English Delftware, but made by the Arabs hundreds of years before we even had Delftware. And basically what this is dipped in, is settled, and then they do some more design on it, and then it's fired. This is actually using a copper oxide to give its color, but obviously this is tin oxide to give its white. But there was one example way back that I forgot to show you that actually saw the core itself was actually white all the way through. So they were able to use types of china clay to make their pottery. You know, they were much more advanced than we were. And actually, this is the point. This is not. They didn't have train stations in the Moor period, but what they've done in the 1800s. They took inspiration at the train station at Toledo to actually build, you know, a structure completely enhanced, influenced by Moorish styles of building. And this is in the 1800s. So, you know, they're really connected with their past. But this is the question, right? When I was working in Cyprus years and years ago, this was actually when I was working in Cyprus, it was just a year before I met Anne on that fateful day. And the pottery that we were actually told that there was this interesting pottery in this guy's house. So we went to this guy's house, and there turned out to be this interesting pottery. It turned out to be Islamic pottery, because Cyprus was actually under the control of the Ottomans for a short period of time, obviously trading with the Moors and all the rest of it. So they're using the same type of pottery. There's the link. And what is wrong with this picture? This is a Hispanic Moresque piece of pottery made in Valencia. And look at that there. This was made by the Moors with IHS, which is obviously, which I always forget what IHS means. Yes, Bill.
Well, in chapel, it meant in his service. I'm trying to work it out. Can I see? I'm not sure I can see IHS there, Carl.
In the middle.
Oh, I got it now.
Yep, got it.
And you know, what does IHS mean? Come on.
In his service, Christian motif.
Yeah, exactly. But there is actually a Latin form. When we look at this, it's obviously clear that the potters were actually trading into the foreign market, because this wouldn't be on a table in an Islamic house. But the Moors produced pottery for the extensive trade market. And this is proof of it. And that's a bit of gold inlay there as well. Beautiful. So what I'd like to do is I would like to do this article with us all. Archaeology U-turn, how ancient Spaniards enjoyed better lives than their contemporaries. And I've kept mentioning this. So I'll try and keep to the letter on this one. Ancient Spain, known to the Arabs as al-andalus, as it was known, enjoyed a period of relative stability in the 900s and thereabouts until 1492, with a myriad ways in which Spaniards then might have enjoyed better lives than their contemporaries, and archaeologists have revealed. So if you watch any Monty Python film, where in this country we're eating mud from a field, and we're all covered in mud. You know the film I'm talking about. Anyway, in Spain, for example, they would have had sanitation, they would have had communication, they would have had roads, they would have had money and all the rest of it. So in the 1000s, when we are still fighting with the Vikings and there's no real structure in this country and we don't have real proper towns and cities, everything is so advanced on the Iberian Peninsula. And look at that there. That is an astrolabe. Yes. So basically, Bill, you explain how an astrolabe works because I'm going to make a pig's ear of this. Go for it.
Well, that basically represents what's in the sky. So you can actually use it to use the rotor there to eye up the particular star you're looking at, and then you can translate that to there and pick out which star it's supposed to be. It's very complicated structure, but simple actually in operation.
Oh, fab. Thank you for that. And obviously an Arabic invention. Go on.
Star seeker, basically.
What's that?
It's a star and planet seeker.
And again, you know, your point to be made earlier on, Bill, the maps and all the other information from these Arabic traders. You know, it's being handed and sold to the Spanish, Portuguese, and the Italians. Without an understanding or grounding in basic history, it is difficult to imagine a time before you. This is especially true when we think about countries, borders, and the customs that might once have prevailed in comparison to the present day. Neither was the popular tourist destination state religion always Catholic, as we've mentioned. Al-Andalus, which is the old name for the Iberian Peninsula, including Spain, was the name given by the Muslims to that landscape. It denotes a time in history roughly from the 711 till 1492. The Berber peoples of Africa simply moved in their droves to Spain, but you know, you still got all the local people as well. So again, lots of these types of illustrations out there to watch. Spain was during this time the Umayyad Caliphate and practiced Islam. Although not overly visible today, remnants of Spain's Islamic past persist throughout the country, in some places more than others, as we've discovered. The civil war did a lot of damage to all sites. The Mosque Cathedral of Cordoba, also known as the Great Cathedral of, also known as the Mosque of Cordoba, whose Christian name is the Cathedral of Our Lady of the Assumption, embodies the Moorish architecture of an Islamic past, a fusion of the two religions that have at some point crossed in Spain's history. So in other words, it was just like handing over the baton. You know, let's do it this way, right? We've created this, now make it into a cathedral. And that's simply what happened. Keep everything that you've got, but make it into a cathedral. Looking at al-andalus, it was probably the best place to live in the medieval period. In Europe, people living there would have been far better than their contemporaries in other places. I'm thinking living in Cordoba in the 900s or Granada in the 1400s. There were political entities which had a lot of problems, but at the same time, they had a lot of economic stability for the period. There's only one way you're able to build these wonderful monuments, and that's because of peace. That's fact. You can't have workforces to carve these things unless you've got a period of peace. People seem to have been happier and able to enjoy a certain level of freedom. That's the key word. Also freedom of religion, freedom of culture in comparison with other states. When we go to York, for example, the Clifford Tower, we were so intolerant of any religions in this country that we herded all the Jews into Clifford Tower and set light to them. Now, they weren't doing this type of thing in Spain. There are examples, but, you know, we've got more examples in this country than Spain does. And Spain is directly up against two massive religions. We were having to deal with a few Jews, and we just burnt them, which is absolutely terrible. I think that it is important to bear in mind, in fact, when Spanish Enlightenment scholars in the 1700s tried to create an enlightened state in the model of France or the Italian states or England, when they looked into their past, they found al-andalus, their Moorish past, and it was widely recognized that this had been the most prosperous period in the history of the Iberian Peninsula. And do you know what? I said that earlier on. I believe that this is the most popular period, prosperous period, not the period that they were stealing gold and silver from America. It might look like an exaggeration, but the fact is, if you look at the second half of the 1700s and the beginning of the 1800s, you see a lot of interest in the Islamic past of Spain. You see it as a certain period of romanticism. The Romantic movement, a lot of them went to Greece or Spain. You know, the likes of Coleridge, the likes of Byron used to go to Greece and Italy to discover themselves. They would go on the grand tour, but some people went to Spain before Egypt was discovered, and they were actually learning. This was the Risorgimento of Spain. Risorgimento, obviously an Italian term, but this was the Enlightenment of Spain. When you look at these wonderful domes and you look up at the ceilings, and Bill, I've got to take task with you. Not all of the Islamic buildings are plain from the outside. We will look at one or two examples that are quite ornate from outside. But Bill, there's reasons why you've got Alhambra like that, because it was a fortified site with the palace inside. So you're right and I'm right, but there's differences in Spanish Moorish art. I think that's an important point as well.
Okay.
This is it, Bill. This is actually a street.
Oh yeah.
You're looking.
What is that? What is that?
This is actually this is in Cordoba, and this is actually a street of merchants' houses. All the so basically, there's some symmetry. Back to that word again, sacred geometry. There's all those pillars in front. You've got the art in regards to the symmetry of the entrance, and looking at that as well, the stone carved windows, and these actually still survive today. You know, it's I find it a difficult concept because our minds have been addled over the years. Could you imagine? You know, it's 1492. You take over this house from a Moor, and you're a Christian, and you have a knock on the door of the Spanish Inquisition, and they're saying you're living in a Moorish house. Why haven't you destroyed all representations of Moorish art? The answer is that that didn't happen because this wouldn't have survived otherwise, would it? So in other words, what we're told is something different. I would like somebody to look at the Spanish Inquisition. I'd like you to look at the Spanish Inquisition from a non-biased point of view. I don't think they were as bad as history tells us. So here we go. Modern Spaniards, like the rest of Europe, enjoy wonderful things today. But maybe they enjoyed wonderful things in the past. In comparison with the rest of Europe, they lived a high life. This is what this is saying. I'm very wary of saying something in Islamic. Spain was better than it is now. And it depends very much on the context, on what you're looking at. Spain was better Spain was better than it is now. That's quite a harsh statement. It's almost as if Spain was far more wonderful in the past. And what you can actually see around you, you can actually see that broadcast. Spain was an enlightened country. And I think the Spanish could learn a lot from their past. And they are doing that with the building work that's going on. But obviously, if you go to the coast where they're building these big blocks, you know, they're not replicating this. But when you look at what happened at Cordoba in the 900s and in general context in the Iberian Peninsula in the 1000s, when there was a big political crisis with a lot of new states emerging and collapsing very quickly, cultural life was incredibly brilliant. It's incredibly brilliant. And there you go. There's the great mosque, which is now a cathedral in the distance there. And the different rules of the states were competing. So in other words, Africa, Egypt, Ottomans, you've got the Arabian Peninsula, you've got the Berbers, and all the other peoples, and the Moors. They're all competing on a on a luxury level, how big you can build, how grand you can build. You know, the brightness of their coats, for example, who can get the most garish silk. And lots of people, lots of more leaders sponsored intellectuals. They had great libraries, poets, architects, physicians. And I think the groundbreaking thing is that Saladin offered the king of Jerusalem a cure for, I think he had leprosy, didn't he? There's that talk that the Muslims were so advanced that they had medical cures for things in the West that we could only dream of. I think it was leprosy, actually. It is quite brilliant. It is quite a brilliant period in terms of art and culture, but it's also a period of economic stability. It was a period of peace and the creation of material structures too. The state of Cordoba collapsed at the beginning of the 1000s, but all the cities and structures lasted the structure of the state itself. And obviously, you know, Moors continued to live there and thrive, but the actual state of Cordoba collapsed. So the cities, we see cities across Spain being created, great cities from the decay of the past. People are still living in Roman towns and so on. As we're coming to the end now, out there, I was working at the site Santa Maria. Obviously, that was in the middle of nowhere. There are Moorish sites in the middle of nowhere, because having a palace in the middle of nowhere is for another reason. Having a town is for trade, having a palace is for another reason. So when the Moors have moved out, they simply abandon these localities, and then you see that sense of great change over time. And wouldn't it be great that those palm trees are actually the children of the great palm trees that were established in that palace? I'd like to think that was true, actually. I really would. Now we're coming really to the end now, but this is really interesting. I said, right, Bill, note the problem. The Moors are producing wine. What's the problem with that statement?
The Islamic faith doesn't allow anyone to drink alcohol.
But they can produce it and they can export it.
They can, yeah.
So, you know, somebody, what we had in the Ironside class, we had somebody saying, oh, I've done my research, which sometimes is a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing. This time it was in the middle. She said, well, in Spain, there's loads of new strains of vines being introduced. And then I said, well, we're coming to this. And then somebody said, well, they didn't drink wine. And I'm thinking, well, they may have had all these new strains, but they didn't drink it themselves. They exported it. Now, basically on here, Allahu Akbar, Allah is great. Allahu Akbar, Allah is great. Allahu Akbar, Allah is great. All the way around it, right? This would be exported to, say, Britain, and there would be wine in it. And basically is exporting the faith. People don't understand what the hell that means, but it's been traded to Britain, or it's been traded to France, or it's been traded to Byzantine, Cyprus when they take it back over, and all the rest of it. Yeah, so all that. And so, in other words, they were, I'm going to say it tongue in cheek, Muslims are great hypocrites, just like Christians are great hypocrites. It's okay to get other people pissed, but they can't get pissed themselves. So I love that side of things. But they were good at making money. Bill, you mentioned about money. They're making money where other people are not making money. So I think that's a good point. This is why people were so resentful about the Jews in Britain, where they were getting very wealthy. Other people weren't. And this builds resentment. This is actually the last image. And then we're going to look at a little bit of a film. So what we've got, what I'm going to do is we're going to finish this lecture on this bit. Then I'm going to show you a little film, and then we'll call it a day. I want to show you a little film about the excavations at Trellick. So you go, Islamic era palace gate uncovered in Spain, March 16th, 2020. Andalusia, there you go. You all know that one. And there you go, look at that, they've done a bit of a reconstruction. So according to a Times report, traces of the multi-leveled gateway to the massive fortified palace built in the 900s by Abdul al-Rahman III, the first Caliph of Cordoba, have been uncovered in southern Spain. This gateway, thought to mark the eastern entrance to the palace grounds at the ruins of the royal city of Medina al-Zahara, as many as 20,000 people. So basically the entire population, as an equation, worked in this locality, 20,000 people. When Pompeii was lost on the 24th of August, AD 79, under 20,000 people were lost. 20,000 people were working in this palace 1,000 years ago. So it must have been a huge palace. Pompeii is huge, right? I know it's hundreds of years before, but this is a huge palace. Giving you a bit of a comparison there. Lavish palace household that had a zoo, aviary, a statue of Lloyd George, 4 fish ponds, 300 baths. Everyone needed a bath. And whoever mentioned Carry On films earlier on, if you watch the film Carry On at your convenience, you'll notice about the order of 1,000 bidets. So you've got 300 baths in this one. Weapons factory, barracks for soldiers for the Royal Guard and so on. The palace was destroyed in AD 1010. And in AD 1010, we haven't even had the Battle of Hastings on the 14th of October 1066 yet. Everything collapsed, and so we found buried the remains of its tiles, wood, nails, beams, hinges, and ornaments. And this itself, the last image of this Moorish civilization today. So what I'd like to do is I would like anyone to spit out any questions, and I want us to show you one last thing. So let's just do that, and I will stop the screen share. Who's going first? Anne, say something quick. You've got one sentence. You've got to say it quick.
That was very interesting. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you. And good for being a good girl, Pat. Anne, you were a good girl. And Pat was a good girl for not interrupting. Pat, anything you'd like to say?
Oh, I just enjoyed it. I'd been to see some of it, so it was nice to find out more.
Okay. And what about you, Del?
Oh, fantastic. Really enjoyed that. It's enlightened me to another part of the world with a different history. Thanks.
I would make one criticism against you, Del. At least next week you can have some makeup on and like Jessica, you could at least make an effort.
Oh, I'll have a go.
Good. I'm talking about bronzed people, Bill.
Right. Okay. You suggested earlier that the Spanish Inquisition may not have been quite so bad or intense as it's made out. That may be the case. But a few years back, I was in northern Spain and I went into a town called San Dinero del Mar. And in the side street there was a museum of torture during the Spanish Inquisition.
Was this in the Basque territory?
Sorry?
Is this in the Basque territory of Spain?
No, this is northern Spain itself. Santander?
Yeah, yeah, well, that was not under Moorish control.
Yeah, I'm talking the Spanish
Inquisition. Oh, right, sorry, carry on. I'm just, yeah.
Right. So I went into that museum, and as it happened, I was the only one there. So I wandered in there, not expecting to see anything barbaric, and I came out and I was feeling quite sick, because I couldn't imagine that that men could devise such devices to torture people to death and kill them in that way. It was horrific. I feel queasy when I come out there, you know. So if it's true, whoever's operating on, whoever devised those instruments of torture and used them, and if it is true that it came from the Spanish Inquisition period, it was absolutely horrific, you know, and it was everything that you were led to believe about the Spanish Inquisition, how barbaric it was. So just my little input into what my experience is of that period on the Spanish Inquisition.
Well, I can't dismiss anything that you've said, and I'm not going to, and I'm not going to undermine anything that you've said at all, and I'm not going to brandish trying to prove my point that it wasn't as bad. But what we do see is that we see the word of Allah all over these buildings still, and if the Spanish Inquisition was as bad as they said it was, all of that would have been destroyed and wiped out. So in other words, I think we've got a problem with the interpretation of history here. And somebody needs to look at this one, and I'd like them to do that. That was a good contribution, that was, Bill. I like to be told I'm wrong, but also
You're not saying the door.
I'm not. Yeah, that's a bit of a debate there. We need, that's needed. Yeah, I'm not saying that you said I'm wrong. I'm just trying to say that there's something not quite right about the history. Henry, quickly, darling.
Right, just doing a little bit of quick reading, and discovered that at this time, the Moorish Spain had 17 universities, and the rest of Western Europe only managed 2.
Wow.
Also, libraries were actually quite dominant actually across the country, and there were none actually in the rest of Western Europe. And there were public libraries available to the public, and they were well educated in reading and writing. Cordoba had 900 public baths, and it had also illuminated streets with lamps for 10 miles and was paved. And this is 200 years before paving even entered London or Paris. I could go on, but
no, I'm actually feeling quite sick, because you really put the Western world down now. I thought I'd done it.
Yeah.
But yeah, you are dead right, and it does make you think that where we're arguing that, right, the point is warfare means that you don't advance as a civilization. Without warfare, you're able to do these great things. And the point is, at the beginning of the First World War, we were a great planet, and we tossed up all our technology, all our technical advances in this really pointless war. And that proves the point. And it proves the point that if you can have religions working alongside each other, as they did in Spain, great things can happen. And that's exactly what happened. Right, Pam, and then we'll go to Jessica. And I'd like to just show you one little image, and then we'll call it a day. Pam, quick. No? Okay. Jessica, anything you'd like to say?
Just thought it was really interesting. I think, you know, it's brought up a lot of things of debate, and it's something that needs to be more attention on, I think.
Yeah, we've looked at a lot of subjects like that. So what we're going to do, we're going to show you 2 little videos. The update on the excavations in Trellick. And I've got to, hopefully, I need to cut that. I need to share the screen, and here we go. Are you seeing a little video in front of you now?
Yes.
Yeah.
So basically, we're going on to site. This is when we started excavating at the end of July. And what we then have is, there's Margaret. Margaret! And then we go onto the site, and it's really overgrown. Stuart Wilson's excavation, because he hasn't been able to maintain it over the summer months. But we are starting to address that. You'll see that a little bit in the next video. These are only 1.5 minute long videos. And there, what we're finding is on the left of the buildings, and where they're excavating there at the back of the manor house. I know Jessica's feeling very jealous at this now. And then where we're excavating, we're actually uncovering what we believe is a wall that was dismissed as a wall. But as we've started to excavate, we've started to find lots of artifacts. We will actually show you them next week. We're actually at Trellick a week Sunday. Guests are welcome. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to stop this video, and I'm going to show you the other video. And just one more video, which I'm going to show you. Just giving you a little bit of an update. And it'd be a shame to rush the artifacts. I know it's really late now. And then this little video now, if we open this. Are you seeing my name up on the screen, Jessica?
No.
Right, it's the other, hang on a minute. If we go with that, and here we go, and share screen. Here we go, and 1, 2, 3. Right, now you're seeing my name?
Yes.
Well, I can't be nothing but me. And there you go. And this is as we go. This was actually on Sunday. This is with the GoPro that the wonderful people of Bridgend funded. We're all issued now with pink or yellow hard hats or bump caps. So what we're doing, we're actually starting to restore the site. That's Menna, who's actually our new member of the team on the Ghost Walk. So she's now working for us. And that's Kyla, our newest addition in the team on the excavation. And as you start to go through, obviously we're going to poddle over. 1 minute to go. We're going to see what we've come up with this wall that we've done more work on. We do actually sift all our soil, but some numpty forgot to take the sieves this time. So there you go. And obviously the back to the building there, and we're going over. And there's the Wicked Witch, Michelle. And you can actually see the wall coming up quite nicely there. The south part of the wall and the northern part of the wall. And one thing about the southern part of the wall, it's likely the one side of the landscape continued in use because we see lots of material mucked around in it. And the northern side of the wall looks like it was collapsed and this part of the landscape abandoned. And we've got lots of artifacts. And interesting enough, we've got a wall coming off there as well. It looks like we've got a building here. The wall was going somewhere. And hopefully, when we show this video next, you'll be able to see this whole wall uncovered. And that's that. And as we start to go off now, there you can clearly see the wall. And here we go. And there is John. So on that note, we're going to stop the screen share. Has anybody else got to say? If Jessica and Henry stays on. Anybody want to say anything else? Next week we're doing Mesa Verde. Anybody else?
No, that was
just
great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Fine.
Okay,
I'm going to sign up.
Yeah,
okay, many thanks. What I'm going to do, I'm going to say goodbye to everybody now. Okay, then. Thanks for that, everybody. See you, Bill, Anne, Pat, Del, and Pam, and Jess and Henry will stay. Take care, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Hoffy coffee.
Coffee, coffee.
Hoffy coffee. Red Wine Hoffy coffee. Oh, Anne was pretty good today. I've got to be honest with you.
It's a washing machine.
Did you see the washing machine?
No.
Oh God, I've got an image of on my computer, which I'll show you next week. Oh, she sent me an image of a washing machine. Can you believe it? Who sends an image of their washing machine to anyone? Right, just Henry, right? You're quite happy just at home, aren't you?
Yeah, pretty cool.
So if we didn't go back to doing any actual classes for a year or never, it wouldn't really bother with you, would it?
Not particularly, but if you did, I would come along.
Okay, then I just wanted to ask that. I just wanted to ask that.
But I'm finding the online class actually, I think it was said to you before, much more informative and effective for me. But that's me.
That's you. That's you. And Jessica, just a quick call.
Yeah.
This sort of involves Henry, right? If I set up the internet before I left next week, it's going to be 1:45. Unfortunately, if I set her up 1:45, 1:45. Let me work this out. 1:45, right? You'd have to stay on until people joined you about 2:25, and obviously keep people talking. And I might actually be able to get back before 2:45 anyway.
Yeah.
So it seems pointless sort of changing the time. And if that's the case, if you can keep them chatting, that would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
So, and I've actually got plans for you in York. But basically, if you're definitely going to go on the trip, right?
Yeah.
What I might do is I might get you with Michelle.
Yeah.
This is sounding all wrong, isn't it? I might get you with Michelle wandering around lots of the museums while I take the other small group off. And in sort of your little bit of an input, we'll pay for all your meals.
Yeah.
I've sold it to her.
You have.
Henry,
You've won.
You have any mention of food, I'm happy.
I've done it. I've done it. I've done it.
Yeah.
I've done it. Right. So before you go, I'll be on YouTube. We'll just do a very short one today, like we did last week, in about half an hour. So I'm gonna have to go in a sec. But what was I? Oh God. Oh yeah. So what I was gonna say quickly is that we'll sign you in for next week's class, and you on the Thursday evening.
Yeah.
And obviously sort out the money with that or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah. It's the deposit for York £100. Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect.
And it's also a deposit of £100 for the fan club as well.
What, with no members?
Yes. Hang on a minute, that's really nasty, that is, Anyway.
So next week, same time.
Next week, same time, but Jessica will be doing the first little bit, and then
We'll be doing a bit of a chat. That's excellent.
Yeah, but I might be able to get back in time. I don't know.
Yeah, that sounds good.
But Jessica,
I look forward to Jessica's chat.
It'll be called Jessica's chat. So Jessica, what I will do is if you sign in at if you get signed in about 45 minutes past 1, I will hand over and you can muck around with the technology. Yeah. I will hand it over to you. You will be the operator of the Third Reich.
All right. Yeah, that's cool.
Okay, on that note, if you two haven't got anything to say whilst I twill with my hair, right? I'm going to leave you be, and if you're going to join us in half an hour, I will see you then. Nothing else, Henry and John?
No, all good.
Take care, guys.
Have a good one.
Bye.
See you next week.
Cheers. See you
Bye
next
for
week,
now.
Henry. Bye.
Bye.
See you, Jessica. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Oh, press that.